Thank you everyone for joining. Very excited to talk about the topic we have today, which is about cracking the SMB code and how United Airlines has very successfully been able to do that. So as way of introduction, my name is Kunal. I am a principal at ZS and I help lead our travel and hospitality practice. And who better to talk about this topic than with the person who leads B2B marketing and international marketing, a lot of good stuff at United. But before I take away our introduction, Jane, maybe any quick introduction that you'd like to share?
Sure, thanks Kunal, great to be here. My fun fact is this is my second time in Venice this week. I actually was fortunate enough to be in the real Venice earlier this week, just got back on Friday, so I'm just kind of hopping all over time zones. So my name is Jane. I've been with United for about 6 years. I lead the B2B marketing team, as Kunal said, and I have the pleasure of launching this brand new capability to address the SMB potential. So really excited to chat with you all today.
Amazing. Well, thank you again for joining. Thank you everybody for joining us for this session. So Jane, let's start all the way at the beginning. Right, small and medium business is of course, a very attractive segment. What did you guys see at United that you thought highlighted the opportunity or the challenges that you were facing? How did you embark on this? Where did this journey start?
Yeah, and it's funny, it actually really started to almost my very first day at United Airlines 6 years ago in 2019, and it was work that you guys were kicking off. One of the things we asked ZS to do is give us the entire landscape of the business travel and the travel market in the US and help us understand where we have opportunities. And the number one opportunity, of course, not surprisingly, was the SMB space. And what we saw is that we had really deep and long-standing relationships with some of the world's largest organizations, but we had essentially single-digit penetration with the small businesses, right? And as we really dug into that, we realized it's because we didn't have a capability to serve them profitably. So that's really where it started, very simply looking at the landscape and identifying a white space where we had really, really low penetration.
Yeah, and as you were speaking, I was just looking out at folks, and you see a few nods here too. I don't think it's uncommon among any industries to target and acquire small and medium-sized businesses. Very hard to go after with traditional sales forces because the ROI is just not there. But of course, now with the innovation in B2B marketing and just MarTech more broadly, we can actually do this efficiently, effectively. So as you guys embarked on that journey, can you talk a little bit about how you used some of what's available now to win some of these customers?
Yeah, absolutely. As we went to build the story of how we want to go after this opportunity, one of the questions we knew we had to answer is, what are we going to do differently this time? Because it wasn't the first time that United tried to go after this opportunity, as you can imagine. In fact, we joked around at the time that we still have United Business Go as a registered trademark for the last time that we had tried it. So it wasn't even that long ago that we had failed. And our competitors had also failed. So the question that we really asked ourselves, what are we going to do differently this time? And as I was building the story, I realized it had to be this idea that it's not a technology, it's an ecosystem that we had to build that's really around 4 parts. The first part of the ecosystem is, of course, the site itself, a place for SMB customers to go to sign up for their program. The second piece was the digital marketing capability to drive them to the site and actually get them to sign up and engage. The third piece of it was the data that was going to allow us to build our target list, build our segmentations off of those target lists, and actually, again, kind of attract them through the digital marketing capability. And finally, it was the team. Like, we needed to actually have a team to orchestrate all this. It wasn't just building a portal or building some sort of system and push and go. It really had to be a full ecosystem of those 4 components. And that's what I've been preaching since that day, is it has to be all of those 4 elements together in order to build the right foundation to scale this in the long term.
Yeah, it's a great point. And for those of you who may not be as familiar with the travel industry, especially on the B2B side, on the corporate travel side more broadly, there's sort of two buyers, right? There's the buyer that we call a corporate travel manager, or the ones who decide to sign up for a program with United, right? For instance, or any other company. And those could be, for a small business, could be a CEO, it could be a CFO, it could be a head of procurement, it could even be a sort of designated travel manager, right? But then there's also the second piece, which is the people who actually travel, the end travelers, all of us, right? And those people, so the way we like to characterize it is you gotta get on the shelf, and then you got to get picked off the shelf, right? And I think to win both those pieces, like Jane said, you have to win in B2B marketing, you have to win in B2C marketing, because you have to have the end travelers pick you. You have to have a dashboard that allows you to manage the program, and even a .com capability where you go to united.com, say, and you want all your fares to sort of seamlessly appear for you, your corporate rates to pull through, and so on. And of course, technology is a big element. Jane talked a little bit about people and process, and we'll talk about that in a second. But Jane, can you talk a little bit more about the technology? Because United has done such good stuff in enabling this and even allowing for this sort of seamless experience and connecting all of these four pieces.
Yeah, thank you. Let me unpack that a bit, because I think you've said a lot of important things there. So yeah, it's helpful to understand our ecosystem and both the travel manager and the travel that we're working with. But as advice to all of you, I'm sure not all of you are in the travel industry, I think the piece of advice there is to think through those layers of influence and understand when you need to unlock that influencer and with what particular message. And that's exactly what we did in our case, right? When we're talking to the travel manager, we're talking about savings that they can deliver for their company. That maybe is not necessarily the most relevant message to the traveler, but to the traveler manager, that's what's important. Some of the reporting tools we offer on our portal, that's important to them, right? So we sort of attract them with the right messaging to influence them to click that button to get into the program. But the journey doesn't end there, as Kunal said, and there's that second layer of influencer. The traveler actually has to still book the trip and put that into their cart. And that's where the technology piece was really important. We wanted that to be super simple. So essentially, you just link your work email address to your business account, and your discounts show up automatically in your app, right? So we wanted to leverage the existing B2C and traveler ecosystem that already exists at United. So they book the exact same way they've always booked. They just kind of click a business travel button versus the personal travel button, right? And we do have amazing technology. If you guys are not United flyers, we do have the #1 app out there, so I highly recommend, first of all, flying United and downloading the app if you haven't. It's truly amazing and world class. And again, as a traveler, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel for you. You get those discounts, you get access to all of that program through the tools and channels you already are using.
Amazing. And so, I'm sure a lot of folks here are thinking, as you talked about technology, take us behind the scenes in terms of maybe some of those, kinks or, some of the challenges you might have run into, or some of the key success factors as you were thinking of executing on this technology, right? What were some of those learnings that you had? I know, in my opinion, you went through this process. It's probably the most patient and best-in-class way of going through this.
Thank you.
But maybe you can share a little bit more with the audience in terms of, some of those things that don't make the newsreel.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there's a lot of lessons there. I'm sure there's some things I'll share with you that are not going to be super surprising, but it's amazing how you can lose sight of it. Number one is, again, it kind of goes back to telling that story. So we built the story, we built an airtight story, and we told it over and over and over and over again. I cannot tell you the number of times I've presented the same slides at different layers of organization. I know it's not ideal, but obviously United is a giant company. A lot of us probably work in giant companies, but it's just being consistent in the storytelling and at all levels and at different parts of the organization. So by the time that we got that funding approved, everyone was bought in, from the DT team that was building the technology to the finance team that was funding the technology to, of course, the sales team that was going to implement this technology. Everyone knew what it was. And a slight nuance to this, too, that I was actually reflecting on recently, we kind of internally branded this thing, and I wasn't necessarily thinking that's what we were doing, but I realized that was a key a key factor in our success, we called it a small business demand center, right? We gave it a name that was very clear, very definitive of what it was, and it was meant to be an internal name to help define this new capability. And every time I talked about it, it's not a technology, it's not a platform, it's this new capability. So I think that was another key factor in the success. And of course, once we got the funding, we kept telling that story, and we continue to tell the story of that success. I would say the second factor is don't wait for all the pieces to be perfectly in place to start, right? We had to start somewhere. We, had really grand visions of building 4 ML algorithms that were going to help us target and segment the customers and decide the next best action. But the reality is we weren't going to build all of them and then start, right? Yep. We had to start somewhere. So the portal was going to have all this functionality. But to be perfectly honest, we're 2 years into the launch and we're still building out that functionality. But we had to start somewhere. And we're slowly scaling, slowly optimizing, slowly tweaking. And the beauty of that approach is we now have an installed user base of real customers that are providing real-time feedback. So we're not training our algorithms on sort of hypothetical data that we bought from a third party. We're training it based on what's actually happening and what our customers are actually doing. And sure, we've had some learnings, and I'll kind of talk about it in our closing and some of our improvements. We've learned that what we went out with 3 options. Well, guess what? 90% of our customers are choosing one of those options. So clearly, we weren't as differentiated or distinctive in those options as we thought we were. But I'm still so happy to be learning live and have the ability to adapt, because it is also giving us the credibility to ask for more funding and to ask for additional investment, because we can say that we're bringing high quality incremental revenue, and not just in our hubs, from our spokes as well.
Personally, in just being a small part of this journey with you guys, I think one of the things that stood out to me was the patience. The patience that this is not a week-long exercise or a month-long exercise or even a few months. It took a lot of fine-tuning of these algorithms, for the targeting to actually work. I know that there were some, you didn't see success immediately. There was some success, pockets of success, but then you stayed the course.
Yes.
It felt like leadership and just cross-functional alignment and commitment to the cause sort of was a key aspect. I know it might sound theoretical, but in reality that was important, as everyone believed in the outcome and said, hey, let's stay the course and let's stick with it. Is that a fair representation of what happened?
That's a really fair representation, and my other piece of advice here is be really clear on ultimately what is that metric that you're measuring, right? So we did go out and say, hey, finance, give us X amount of dollars and we're going to give you 100 million bajillion dollars, right? And at the end of the day, we did not deliver on a year 1 number. And we had to go in front of finance and we had to explain the conversation. And it was actually one of the best meetings I've ever had, because we went into that meeting saying we did not hit our objectives. But what really matters? It's not the revenue that's flowing through. It's not the number of accounts that we've signed up. But it's the fact that these are incremental customers that are what we call in our business high yield, which just means they paid a lot of money for the plane ticket. So we focused on that metric, that we're bringing in high yield incremental revenue into the system. That definitely still more than paid back the investment that we made on the money. So we didn't hit our goal in terms of the number of accounts, we didn't hit our goal in terms of the overall revenue, but ultimately what finance cares about is high quality incremental revenue, and we got that.
So, of course, we're here at reInvent. Technology is obviously the cornerstone of what happened here, but I don't think it would be, I think it would be unfair to say that this was only a technology effort, because at least just from having seen this again from our lens, the team that you had in place, the operating model of how you worked with technology, revenue management, other functions, just overall, there was much more than just the technology. Can you talk a little bit about some of those other enabling factors for success?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, one of the elements of the funding that we asked for was a project we did with you guys to help us build the team, to write the job descriptions, to write an operating model of how this team was going to work within the broader organization. And we still obviously have fruit from that. So that was a really important part of it, right? It wasn't just we got this head count and then we're done, we wash our hands clean. We really had to think about how does this new team work within the existing structure and what are those SOPs that we're all aligned to. And the other thing I would say is it's really, really important to hire the right person to lead that team, right? There is, a very specific skill set when you're launching something brand new. That person has to be collaborative. They also have to be really comfortable working in gray areas, and just in general, I think that's the number one thing I evaluate these days. Like, are you able to work in gray area? Because there's no more black and white in this world. So that was really important, and someone who has an insane amount of ownership, right? Someone who's going to break down barriers and make it happen, because it's really challenging. It is really challenging, especially when you start. So that would be my other tip. If you're building out a new capability like this to address SMB potential, be really, really thoughtful of who you put at the helm of that kind of organization.
That's right. And she is great. She knows who she is, but she's great. And I do think overall ownership of this program, and you talked a little bit about SBDC and the branding, but one of the things I've heard you say is, hey, it's not just a technology, it's a capability. It feels like this is one of those things that all these three pieces have to sort of work together for it to really
Four pieces, Kunal.
All four pieces. But all the pieces have to work together
Yes.
for this to really work well.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. All right, so we have a few more minutes. I was just looking at the time. We have a few more minutes. So Jane, maybe if we can close with what's next, right? SBDC, of course, is yielding tremendous value to United and targeting the right customers. It's taken time, but you're of course hitting your stride now. But I don't think we can walk past a booth here without talking about agentic AI or some of the innovations that are on the horizon. So maybe can you share a little bit about where SBDC goes from here?
Yeah, absolutely. I can mention three things that we're continuing to tweak on. I already touched on a couple of them, but I'll just expand on it. Number one, like I said, we did learn that the products that we put out in front of our customers did meet one segment of the opportunity, but missed a pretty big one. And so we spent a lot of time trying to address that. So we've essentially satisfied the people that were just wanting straight discounts on their tickets, right? They don't care about anything else. I'm just trying to save the bottom line for my company. So we have a plan for that that's been really successful. That's the one that 90% of our customers are signing up for. But there's a segment of customers we're learning that are really into the experience and into the freebies, right? So they want to be earning the freebies and the points that they can redeem for free things. And that was not something that we had the technology to build into the portal initially. We had a feeling that was going to be the case, to be honest, because we clearly understand our customers well. But we also knew that technology-wise, we weren't going to be able to launch in a time. So we chose to launch with a discount-only program, but having a pretty good sense that we were going to have to do this follow-up work, and that's exactly what we're doing. And we just announced that we're going to launch that phase of the plan mid of next year, where customers will be able to sign up, and they don't receive discounts, but they slowly earn benefits and rewards as they travel with United. The other piece we talked about is the algorithms, right? We're continuing to build them out. And now we're getting to a phase of it where it's learning from actual customer behavior, which is really exciting versus kind of hypothetical data that we were buying from a third party. And the next algorithm we're working on is that next best action algorithm, which is essentially going to recommend a marketing action to the digital marketing team for a lead that's coming into the platform based on where they're coming from and what they've engaged with from a content standpoint to date, and what we know from past customers in terms of what was most likely to drive the conversion, right? So that algorithm is incredibly important and is the final algorithm of what ZS had proposed to us at that time that we are in the process of building. And finally, of course, Gen AI, we have to talk about a chatbot. We did introduce a chatbot to the platform. To be honest, we only have 2 individuals that are servicing these 10,000 of customers that are coming into our portal, and so chatbot just makes that more efficient. But the chatbot is just as good as the information we've put in it. It's not generative, it's not very smart, and so we are noticing that things are escalating to human quite often. And so if we want to continue to scale, we're going to have to improve the generative abilities of that chatbot to address more of the questions that are coming in. So again, we can continue to scale with the size of the team that we currently have. So I would say those are 3 key initiatives we're working on for 26.
Very exciting, and honestly, I think for me the biggest takeaway was just the fact that you invested in laying the right foundation, but realized that this wouldn't yield value right off the bat, but then continuing to stay the course, leadership, investments, and all of that, and then of course now sort of hitting stride. So really inspiring story. Thank you for sharing, Jane. Any final words or any tips or advice for the audience before we close here?
Before they drag us off stage and there's a 0 on the I think my advice would just be tell your story, be really clear and tight on what your story is, tell your story over and over again, and be really focused in your story on the metrics that matter to your broader organization.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. I think we're right on time. Appreciate everyone's time. Thank you.
Thank you,
Jane.
so much.